They stopped making Sly Cooper for this?
I remember when this game was announced and playing the demo when it was released. I wasn't really interested in that game for a few reasons. I actually bought the inFamous collection a few days before my birthday last year and I never touched it until my birthday this year. So yes, this game was sitting on my shelf, still in its wrapper for an entire year. Never played it until recently. I bought it so I could review the games, which I meant to do last year but just forgot about it. Out of all the games that I have, physically and digitally, from moment of purchase, this one has remained untouched for the longest. I know I've stressed this quite well in the past few seconds, but I just want to make it not only clear, but to give you a good idea as to how much this game did not interest me. And it's not because inFamous isn't Sly Cooper, or because Sucker Punch decided to try a different game, but I had no issues with Naughty Dog not doing Crash Bandicoot to work on the Jak series, then switch to Uncharted. I did not mind that Insomniac switched from Spyro to Ratchet & Clank and then to Resistance, but yet they still made Ratchet games and are still making them, as they announced a remake of the first game for the PlayStation 4. It's just a lack of interest, and I think it stems from the oversaturation of these types of games. The open world sandbox game with a boring main character and an overly convoluted story, but I'll get into that in a bit. Sucker Punch started development as they were wrapping up the development of Sly 3. They decided to switch gears from the cartoony stealth game to something brazen and loud. As comic book fans, they wanted a game to be about a superhero and made it an origin story. They took inspiration from DC comic series, DMZ, and No Man's Land, where it takes place in a city that was hit with a disaster. But they said that any correlation to the DC hero's static was unintentional, and I call bullshit on that. The graphics are okay for their time. There's nothing really making it stand out among the other games were supposed to look real. From a technical standpoint though, it could have been better. The game runs at 720p and that's why it looks like crap in this video. And it struggles to maintain what I think is 60 frames a second, which is pretty bad. The cutscene animation is composed of still images done in a comic book style and they look really good. In-game cutscenes could have been better. The opening scene has some really good animation when Cole is laying on the ground, but once you get into the game proper, it's like the PS2 Sly Cooper games, where it's quick and stiff motions, which was okay for a cartoony platformer, but it looks really weird for something going for realism. I really don't know what to say about the sound, other than it's okay I guess, in some parts of the game anyway, as there are some parts where the sound quality seems rather scratchy and low in quality, at least in the beginning anyway, as the quality improves over the past first hour.
When it comes to the overall feel of the game, the apple didn't fall that far from the tree. In fact, it didn't even really hit the ground, it's still just kind of floating there.
The controls are pretty loose. Controlling Cole is like running on Teflon while wearing socks with your controller that was just dipped in melted butter. Cole moves a lot faster than he should. He's unnaturally fast, and you can run past pretty much everything except bullets. Those will always get you. So unfortunately for Cole, he isn't the grease lightning that Sonic is. And he clings to everything. Jumping towards a wall, he'll try to latch onto it, even if you don't want him to go that way. And he even has a hard time trying to grab onto the things that you want him to grab onto, as he'll latch onto the closest thing available, even if it's in the way of your intended target. I've never seen static cling this bad before. My socks don't cling to my polyester shirts that bad when they come out of the dryer, although that's not really static cling holding them together. The major element this game brings to the table is that Cole has electric powers, but when you realize how they function a majority of the time, it's more of a novelty. You're probably looking at this and thinking, well, it looks like any third-person shooter, and you're pretty much right. Cole's basic attack is like using a handgun in any other third-person shooter. The shockwave is like using a shotgun. The only difference is that they don't initially kill your enemy, and you have unlimited ammo. And once the enemy's on the ground, you need to hit them one more time to kill them. You'll also get the ability to throw shock grenades, which are just grenades, but again, they don't initially kill. You're essentially playing as Nathan Drake with no personality and superpowers. You can fall from any height and not die unless you're in the intro stage or fall into water. And Cole is also rather acrobatic. You can go anywhere you want and jump from rooftop to rooftop with no issue as you make your way through the jungle gym-like city, unless Cole decides to get intimate with whatever happens to be in your way. Cole will cling to everything, but yet you need to hit a button to get him to take cover behind something. So I'm confused on that part, as it seems contradictory for him to auto-grab everything except when needing to take cover. He also won't run off of a ledge. You need to jump off the ledge first, which can be problematic if you're just trying to drop down to the level below you. The enemy AI is pretty intelligent and I like it. If you're up on the rooftops like the game encourages you to be and you're trying to shoot them from above, they'll move closer to the building so you can't see them. If you're on the train tracks, they'll get under the tracks so you can't shoot them. I've seen them even move to sneak around behind Cole if they could, and they move very fast, just as fast as Cole, as they manage to keep a good distance away from him if you're chasing them to use melee attacks. And that's why you'll rarely see me use the melee combat unless I somehow manage to get close, and most of the enemies will be far away and shooting at you, so there's no point of melee combat unless it's possible. There's an experience system and karma system in place. The more you defeat enemies and complete missions or perform stunts, the more experience you get, and how you accomplish them also affects your experience gain, and what you do also affects your karma as well. If you take the easier routes when it comes to a choice, it doesn't harm Cole physically, but harms innocent people and you'll get bad karma. But if you take the choices that are likely to get you hurt, you'll save innocent people and get good karma. For example, if you take down an enemy, you'll get 5 experience points and it's good karma too. But if you kill them, it's 1 experience point and it's neutral, not affecting your karma. But if you use electricity to pin the enemy to the ground when they're knocked down, you'll get 3 experience points and it's good karma too. But if you use biodrain, you'll gain experience, but it's bad karma. Depending on your karma, you'll gain access to good or evil specific abilities, or abilities you already have will be augmented to your karma. You'll use the experience points to upgrade your abilities, and you get new abilities by restoring power to parts of the city with no electricity. There's also a lot of side missions to do, and the more you do, the more your karma changes. And some missions have an added bonus of completely safe zoning an area, making it so that no gang members in charge of the 3 islands don't show up. And with all this talk of karma, you really don't need to worry about collateral damage. Civilians know how to get out of the way. To get bad karma, you really need to go out of your way to hurt people in the streets if you're not doing evil missions. The game's story remains pretty much the same. The ending, depending on your karma, and the story itself is pretty complicated, and I think it's unnecessarily complicated. It has to do with government project, WMDs, and time travel, and it opens itself up for sequel bait.
That's a bold move. Let's leave this game open for a sequel. It's a new IP, so we're going to take all of our eggs and put them in one basket. Because even if this game tanks, if we leave the ending open, people are definitely going to want another one, so this way they could get closure. After all, it's been working for movies for years, and that's how they treat games nowadays.
inFamous is probably the perfect example of how a new intellectual property starts. It throws some stuff to the wall to see what sticks, and there seems to be a lack of refinement. But this is Sucker Punch. They made Sly Cooper, and even the first game in that series felt more refined in terms of controls. Sly felt natural when it came to controlling him. He didn't feel too loose or too tight, and he didn't automatically grab onto everything he could when jumping and climbing onto things. You had to press a button to interact with things you could grab and climb, giving you a sense of control. inFamous, on the other hand, there's less control because Cole is too loose and fast. And with the whole jungle gym-like areas of the city allowing you to climb all over the place, it feels like it's trying to be Sly Cooper. It's just that stealth has been substituted for third-person gunplay, and it is gunplay. It's just disguised as electric superpowers, which is fine. But with Cole being so loose and having him grab everything automatically, I feel like I can't be as precise as I want to be, and I find myself fighting him as I try to get him where I want him to go. If he was this loose but there was a button that I could press to make him grab onto things, or even if they had auto grab but the controls were not as loose, that would be better. But if the controls were tighter and had a grab button, it would be perfect. I have a hard time believing that this game's similarities to Static Shock weren't done purposely, as the story is pretty much the same. Instead of bang babies, they're conduits. Instead of bang gas, it's a ray sphere, and both things cause an explosion. This is pretty much a static video game, just with a boring white guy, and that's the problem. Cole is a boring, uninteresting character. I don't care for him at all, which is bad for a story-driven game. And yes, if the game is story-driven, story and characters do matter. Not as much as gameplay, but it's a very close second. I don't hate inFamous, nor do I think it's a bad game. Unrefined in terms of control and a very derivative story that's too complicated for its own good, but not bad. I'm more surprised that this is a game that came from Sucker Punch. In the PS2 era, Jack, Ratchet, and Sly took off running right out of the gate. But in the PS3 era, Uncharted and again Ratchet have taken off running, but inFamous seems to have stumbled out of the gate. I haven't played Resistance, so I can't compare it, and given that it's a first-person shooter and not an action platformer type, it may not have been a good comparison anyway. inFamous does bring a lot of good ideas to the table. You can climb on everything, and getting powers depending on how good or evil you are is pretty neat, and it gives you incentive to go back through the game and try a different alignment to see what changes. The beginning of the game can be rather difficult, as Cole can get shot to pieces quite easily, and with gang members on rooftops shooting at you wherever you go, the beginning of the game may take you a little longer than you'd expect, because until you're able to spend the experience points to reduce the damage you take and increase your own output, it can turn new players away from the game. But once you learn that you need to stay as far away from the enemies as you can and just pick them off at a distance, the game gets much easier. But I feel that there's no real satisfaction, and when the game sends large, and I mean very large waves of enemies at you, there's more of a feeling of relief than accomplishment. But there's another but little technical thing that bothers me, like the game being at a resolution of 720p, but it struggles to maintain 60 frames per second. I honestly expected better from Sucker Punch for their first game on the PlayStation 3, especially when Naughty Dog blew us out of the water with Uncharted, and I was expecting the same from Sucker Punch. inFamous is in no way a bad game, but a good game that needs a little more refinement.
I haven't played inFamous 2 yet, and I can only hope that Sucker Punch improved the couple of flaws this one had. Other than that, this is a pretty decent game. I am going to be giving away this Samus Amiibo to one lucky person. All you gotta do is just leave a comment below, and I'm gonna choose one at random. Good luck!